Now, before I give my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch and the overall presentation, I do want to come out saying that my expectations for this entire thing were low. I do also want to admit that my overall thoughts and reactions are a bit negative. So if any negativity towards Nintendo offends you, please click away from this video now. However, that does not exclude any positive things that I do have to say about the presentation as well, or my thoughts on this console in general. No company, console, or piece of hardware is impervious to criticism. And the criticism that I'm providing to you today is constructive criticism. I'm not here to rant, so if you're here to see me bitch about Nintendo, well, you're in for disappointment as well. That being said, I do want to start off with the positives. For instance, region locking is now out of the equation. This, in my honest opinion, is a good thing, and I'm pretty sure the majority of people out there would agree. Previous consoles that Nintendo's put out in the past over the last generations have always been region locked. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them have been. Some of you are probably wondering, well, who cares? Who cares if something's region locked or not? I just want to play the games. Precisely. There's a good amount of Japanese titles that many people want to play, and due to region locking making it difficult on them, have not been able to play these in the past. This is a plus for the consumers. Not only does it give them access to games released in the States, but it'll also give them access to games released in Japan. For instance, there could be a handful of people who would rather play the original Breath of the Wild over the American dubbed audio. I would. Making the Switch, no pun intended, to a capacitive touchscreen is a big leap forward for Nintendo. Another positive that I have to include is the charging cable, going to USB Type-C. To many, this seems like a very minuscule positive, but in reality, it's a very big one. I mean, let's face it, Apple themselves already overpriced their charging cables, and Nintendo themselves were not far in that department. Having such a universal charging cable is in the favor of everyone buying the Switch. Have you ever lost a cable to your 3DS? Good luck finding one. But this time around, things are different with the Switch. You lose your charging cable to the Switch? Why not pull out the same charger you use for your Android? Point being, these cables are dirt cheap and easy to find. These are what you could consider very insignificant positives, but in my honest opinion, overall they make the biggest difference for the Switch in comparison to previous Nintendo consoles, because what this shows is that Nintendo is starting to adapt to the current market. For a lot of us, it's, oh yeah, duh, that's the standard. Exactly. Nintendo is starting to adapt and become what is standard. Something that a lot of us have complained about. All that aside, honestly, that's the most positive things I could find. Now, moving on to the negatives. Don't you dare. As an overall presentation, as an overall reveal of this console and its capabilities, performance, games, features, it was a very, how can I put it, lackluster reveal. So much of the focus on the Nintendo Switch went into its Joy-Cons, which, by the way, are extremely overpriced and unacceptable. Having to pay close to $70 for a pair of Joy-Cons just doesn't seem like a very reasonable price to most consumers out there. It reeks of Wii all over again. Nintendo seems to continue to build off the success of the Wii, but let's face it, the success of the Wii was, well, luck. The Joy-Cons themselves just seem so unnecessary. The price of the Nintendo Switch itself could have easily been $250 had they not put so much focus into building motion controls all over again. Does it not bother anyone else out there that more focus was put onto 1-2 Switch than there were on any of the AAA games? I understand that the Switch is a combination of all of Nintendo's consoles put into one system itself, but if we take a look back at the features of those previous consoles, so many of those concepts were dropped not even within a year of the release of the systems. But who knows, perhaps like the 3DS, maybe Nintendo will release a version of the Switch that doesn't have Joy-Cons, just like the 2DS that doesn't have the 3D feature. Now let's move on to battery life. I don't honestly know how I feel about this one. Look, none of us expected this thing to have a very long battery life. When you have a handheld system capable of running games with the detail of Breath of the Wild, getting 7 or even 8 hours of battery life is, well, not gonna happen. Which begs the question, is this even a proper handheld from this point of view? I understand that it's seen more as a portable device than a home console. One reason for that is because the Switch itself doesn't even have an Ethernet port. The docking bay itself doesn't include an Ethernet port. And the fact that they're charging you $90 for a docking bay, I cannot justify that at all. This doesn't just include the docking bay. Nearly all the accessories to the Nintendo Switch are drastically overpriced. One of the selling points to Nintendo consoles in the past were that the online services were free. That changes now with the Switch. Now, Nintendo hasn't revealed the price for online yet, but they have stated that those who do pay will once a month get 1 or 2 NES or Super Nintendo ROM games. And what's more, the games can only be kept for a month. I myself, as a PC gamer, do not support online memberships. Having to pay to access to play your games online is extremely anti-consumer. But looking at the competition, PlayStation and Xbox, at least they have some benefits to paying for their online memberships. Oh, but it's not about that. It's about the games, right? Eesh. Well, let's talk about the games themselves. Although games coming to the Switch do look great, it's the launch lineup that's the problem here. The launch lineup to the Switch is very weak. At launch, gamers won't really have a lot to play. Not to mention, this thing does not come bundled with anything. Not even 1-2 Switch. 1-2 Switch has to be bought separately for $50. So if you're looking at it realistically, you won't be paying $300 for the Switch. You'll be paying $360 at release. There wasn't much to reveal for the Nintendo Switch. It was a very underwhelming and quite disappointing reveal. And I'd really hate to have to continue using this word for Nintendo, but once again, it's a gimmick. Did Nintendo change some things for the better? Yes. If anything, there are some good signs here. Those good signs being that Nintendo is starting to understand that the standard for video games has changed. They are adapting in that department to some extent. However, that doesn't change the fact that the Nintendo Switch is easily going to be the most expensive console to invest in this generation. Its accessories are overpriced. If you want a solid SD card for that system, you're going to have to pay quite a big buck. The online is no longer free. You're going to have to pay for it. When taking all of this into account, it's not hard to see that the Nintendo Switch will be the most expensive console this generation to invest in. And forgive me if I sound very negative here, but paying $360 for this system at launch, it's not justifiable. The concept of the system itself, however, is a good concept, but once again, only Nintendo is capable of taking a good concept and shattering whatever potential it has. Do understand that I am not judging this console or the games on it. What I am judging, however, is Nintendo's business, marketing, and decisions behind it. Do I think it'll sell well? My predictions are that this system will definitely sell better than the Wii U, but I don't think it'll top the sales of the 3DS. But I could be wrong. This thing could easily go on to outsell the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox. And I am hoping that Nintendo succeeds with this system. To me, the Nintendo Switch seems more like a secondary system than a primary. This isn't me being dismissive. This is me, however, looking at things from the perspective of a consumer. Do I think the Nintendo Switch is worth buying? Well, not at launch, no. I highly suggest to anyone who thinks about pre-ordering the Nintendo Switch to not do so. The console itself is not worth your money at this moment. There's nothing wrong with being skeptical, and at the same time, there's nothing wrong with being hyped. But if you let your emotions get the best of you, then you may very well end up with another Wii U.